Everyone wants success like it's a gift, but they don't want to unwrap the process. They search for the easy button, hoping it'll launch them into purpose without paying the price. But here's the truth. Most people run from the easy button exists, but it's hidden behind discipline, obedience, and pain. You don't push it with wishful thinking. You push it with unwavering action. If success was easy, everyone would be living in overflow, but it's not, because pressing that button doesn't just change your results. It requires you to change you. Success has never been complicated. The formula isn't hidden in some secret vault or buried under a mountain of philosophy. The path to success has been the same for centuries. Show up consistently, master your craft, operate with integrity, speak with confidence, serve people with excellence. These are not mysteries, they are principles. But what people confuse is this: just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy. There is a vast difference between knowing what to do and doing it every single day, especially when you don't feel like it, when no one is watching, and when there's no applause waiting at the end of the effort. Most people are looking for complicated solutions because it gives them an excuse to delay action. They want the 10-step program, the newest app, or the perfect environment before they move. But success doesn't require more steps. It requires more strength. The simplicity of the success formula confronts the complexity of our excuses. It exposes us. It strips away our justifications and says, are you willing to be consistent even when no one validates you? That's the real challenge. It's not a matter of intelligence or talent or education. It's a matter of obedience to a proven path that seems boring, repetitive, and sometimes invisible. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to keep it turning. But turning that wheel day after day feels heavy when you're relying only on emotion. That's where most people give up. They expect excitement to carry them, but success isn't built on excitement. It's built on endurance. Emotional energy will run out, but disciplined commitment, that stays even when motivation disappears. The reason success feels hard is because it requires you to keep going long after the novelty wears off. It demands repetition, and our flesh resists repetition. It craves variety, comfort, and ease, but success is produced in repetition. Repetition of truth, repetition of action, repetition of effort. What makes simple things difficult is that they feel too small to matter in the moment. Making one more call, posting one more video, practicing one more hour, reading one more chapter. These are tiny actions, and yet, when repeated consistently, they multiply into massive results. But because we don't see the results immediately, we abandon the process prematurely. And so we keep searching for something bigger, while the very thing we ignored was the seed of success. Success is simple because it's sowing and reaping. But it's hard because sowing requires faith and reaping demands patience. The reason the success easy button is hard to push is because we underestimate how much resistance we have internally. Not external resistance, internal resistance. The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of being seen starting small, those are the silent enemies that keep us from acting on what we already know. The strategy isn't the problem. The spirit is weak. We are not fighting the complexity of the steps. We're fighting the inconsistency of our own standards. We have convinced ourselves that the problem is knowledge when the real problem is obedience. You don't need more instructions. You need more execution. The difference between those who win and those who wander is not in the information they have, it's in how often they act on it. The ones who win are not the ones who figured out the perfect plan. They're the ones who kept showing up for the imperfect one, because consistency will outperform brilliance every single time. The world doesn't reward the most gifted, it rewards the most faithful. The ones who kept pressing forward when others got distracted. The ones who pressed play when others pressed pause. The ones who did the simple thing over and over until results had no choice but to manifest. Success doesn't respond to how much you know. It responds to how much you apply. And application is always harder than analysis. People get addicted to learning because it makes them feel productive without requiring them to risk. But learning without action creates arrogance. It convinces you that you're moving forward when you're really just standing still with more information. The simplicity of success becomes an insult to your pride. You think you're beyond the basics, but you haven't even mastered them. You think you're stuck because it's too simple, but you're stuck because you haven't honored what's simple long enough for it to work. And so the cycle continues. People chase complexity while ignoring clarity. They chase speed while ignoring structure. They chase excitement while ignoring execution. But success doesn't bow to chaos. It responds to order. Divine principles, when followed with discipline, create predictable results. But it feels too slow, too quiet, too ordinary. And so people leave the path and wonder why nothing works. But the truth is, success was never far away. It was just too humble in appearance for your ego to respect. And that's why the easy button becomes so hard to press. It looks too easy to be effective, but too hard to be enjoyable. There is no mystery in success. There is only maturity. Maturity to keep doing what works even when it feels invisible. Maturity to stay the course when nothing is moving. Maturity to trust that obedience is the seed and time is the water. But that level of maturity is rare because the mind screams for results, but success whispers, keep going. The emotions want evidence, but the principles say, stay planted. The world teaches performance, but true success requires presence. To be present in the moment, present in your mission, and present in your process, even when the progress is not yet visible. Most people say they want success, but what they really want is relief. They don't want to be changed. They want to be rescued. They say they're looking for the easy button, but when they see what it takes to push it, they back away. The easy button is right in front of them, but it's protected by a wall called inner transformation. It's not guarded by the world. It's guarded by their own unwillingness to confront who they are right now. Because to press that button is to admit that you must become someone new. It is to lay down who you've been so you can rise as who you were created to be. The easy button is obedience. It's integrity. It's getting in alignment with purpose. It's shutting down the lies you've believed about yourself and walking in truth. But transformation isn't comfortable. It confronts your patterns. It breaks your routines. It exposes the places you've been hiding. It removes the mask you wear in public and deals with the motives that drive your decisions in private. And most people would rather stay busy pretending than slow down and face what needs to change on the inside. They want results, but not refinement. They want influence, but not introspection. That's why the easy button is so hard to push, because it doesn't ask for your hustle. It asks for your honesty. It asks you to stop blaming others, stop avoiding your own reflection, and deal with the habits that are sabotaging your destiny. It asks you to look in the mirror and say, I've been the one in my own way. That takes courage. That takes humility. And until you're willing to go through that inner confrontation, the button won't respond. Not because it's broken, but because you're still trying to push it with unclean hands and an unstable heart. People chase tactics but ignore truth. They try every new strategy, every new system, every new software. But success isn't about what you do before, it's about who you are. If your mindset is broken, every strategy will fail. If your beliefs are weak, every business will fall. If your character is compromised, every opportunity will eventually collapse. The easy button doesn't open the door to success until your identity has been upgraded. You can't get to the next level in life while holding on to low-level thinking. Inner transformation is the key that unlocks every external breakthrough. What makes it hard is that transformation doesn't happen in a day. It's a daily decision to renew your mind, to reject old narratives, and to replace old habits with new disciplines. It's a process that feels invisible, but creates unstoppable power. Because once you change the inside, nothing on the outside can intimidate you. The reason most people never get there is because they want to change environments before they change themselves. But the problem isn't your location, it's your foundation. If you don't fix the internal, your external will never be sustainable. Transformation requires surrender, and surrender feels like loss before it feels like gain. You have to give up the excuses that comforted you. You have to walk away from the identity that protected you. You have to release the version of yourself that was built on pain, fear, rejection, or pride. That's hard because we often love our patterns even when they're destroying us. The easy button sits in the center of surrender, and the longer you resist that surrender, the longer you delay the release of your full potential. People ask why the breakthrough hasn't come, why success hasn't arrived. And the answer is almost always the same, because you haven't become the person who's ready to receive it. You want the promise without the preparation. You want the stage without the submission. But God doesn't promote people based on potential. He promotes them based on preparation. And preparation is what happens when you stop looking around and start looking within. When you stop complaining about the system and start correcting your spirit. Transformation isn't loud. It's not glamorous. It's not something you can always post about. But it's the real work. It's the work of confronting your inconsistency, challenging your fear, realigning your thoughts, and choosing obedience over convenience. It's the work that no one claps for, but that heaven honors. It's the work that builds an unshakable foundation. It's the work that makes the easy button respond, not because you earned it, but because you became aligned with it. The reason you haven't pressed it yet isn't because you don't know how. It's because you're still negotiating with the part of you that wants comfort more than calling, the part of you that wants control more than transformation. And as long as that negotiation is happening in your soul, the button will feel impossible to reach because it's not accessed through effort. It's accessed through alignment. And alignment only happens when the inside of you gets in agreement with the truth that's been waiting for you to stop running. Discipline is the force that activates everything. It is the pressure you apply when talent isn't enough, when motivation fades, and when clarity seems distant. People talk about goals, they talk about dreams, but what separates the talkers from the builders is one thing: discipline. Discipline is the invisible strength that allows a person to press that success button over and over again, even when it feels like nothing is happening. It is the only guarantee that effort won't die in the valley of excuses. Without discipline, the vision will remain a fantasy locked behind the gate of inconsistency. The success easy button is hard to push because it demands sustained pressure, and that pressure is discipline in action. It's easy to be inspired for a moment, but discipline requires daily choices that no one claps for. It's waking up early, not just once, but every day. It's doing the right thing when the wrong thing feels easier. It's showing up when your feelings are screaming for you to quit. Most people don't fail because of lack of information. They fail because of lack of application. And application without discipline is like trying to lift a weight with no muscle. It collapses under its own potential. Discipline is not punishment, it is preparation. It molds you into the kind of person that success can rest upon. Without discipline, success becomes a burden. With discipline, success becomes an extension of who you already are. It's the internal system that keeps you grounded when everything external is uncertain. When you're disciplined, you don't need constant motivation because you've built momentum. And momentum doesn't ask for your permission. It just keeps going. Discipline feeds momentum, and momentum multiplies results. Most people try to live their lives on emotion, but emotions are inconsistent. They're reactive. They fluctuate based on mood, weather, feedback, and fatigue. But discipline is consistent. It's proactive. It shows up when emotions are sleeping. It moves when feelings don't want to move. And this is what makes the easy button so deceptive. It looks like it requires effort, but it actually requires endurance. Not loud bursts of energy, but quiet and relentless pressure day in and day out. That kind of pressure only comes from a disciplined life. Every time you push through resistance, you apply pressure to the button. Every time you act in obedience to what you know is right, you apply pressure to the button. Every time you reject distraction and stay focused, you apply pressure to the button. But this pressure doesn't come naturally. It must be developed. And it's developed through daily decisions, small acts of control, and repeated commitment to a greater cause. The button doesn't move when you hit it once in a while. It responds to sustained force, and that's what discipline gives you. Discipline makes the difference between starting and finishing. Starting is easy. Anyone can get excited. Anyone can write a goal down. Anyone can post a plan on social media. But finishing requires something deeper. It requires you to stay faithful to the process when progress is invisible. Discipline makes you finish what inspiration helped you begin. It gives you the ability to press through the silence, press through the delays, and press through the doubts. Without discipline, even the best plan dies before it can breathe. People pray for breakthrough, but God often answers with instructions. And discipline is how you respond to those instructions. You can't say you're believing for more and keep behaving like less. Discipline is what proves that your faith is active. It's not glamorous. It's not flashy, but it's powerful because every disciplined decision you make builds trust in yourself. And when you trust yourself, you stop waiting for others to validate your steps. You move in purpose because you've already built the muscle for it. The button is hard to push not because it's faulty, but because we are fragile without discipline. We want convenience, but discipline demands commitment. We want ease, but discipline requires endurance. And until discipline becomes your default, the button will always feel out of reach. But when you make discipline your standard, you no longer need to hope for results. You expect them, not because of arrogance, but because of alignment. You've trained yourself to keep pressing no matter what. The world celebrates outcomes, but discipline lives in the unseen. It's what you do when no one is watching, when no one is cheering, when no one even knows you're still trying. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because discipline, when applied consistently, compounds. It multiplies, it expands your capacity, and eventually overflows into every area of life. What started as one decision becomes a lifestyle. What started as a small step becomes a new standard. And that standard sets you apart, not because you tried harder, but because you refused to stop. The success button works. It has always worked. It's not broken. It's not faulty, and it's not missing. It works for those who work it. It works for those who don't just admire it, but apply pressure to it with their actions, their consistency, and their faith. But here's the part most people miss. It only works for those who are willing to pay the unseen price. The button is not activated by interest. It's activated by investment, not a financial investment first, but a personal, spiritual, and emotional one. The kind of investment that costs you comfort, convenience, and sometimes even company. People see successful individuals and think they got lucky or connected with the right people or stumbled onto something. But what they don't see is the price they paid when no one was watching. They don't see the early mornings, the late nights, the long seasons of silence, the rejections, the moments when quitting looked easier than continuing. They don't see the hidden hours behind the highlight reel. And because that price is invisible to the public eye, most people assume the button doesn't work for them. But the truth is, it works the same. It just costs the same too. The reason so many people struggle to activate the success they say they want is because they want public rewards for private laziness. They want visible breakthroughs without invisible obedience. But success has never responded to shortcuts. It responds to sacrifice. The kind of sacrifice that nobody claps for. The kind that requires you to say no to distractions, say no to mediocrity, say no to things that look good but aren't aligned with what God called you to do. That kind of sacrifice feels heavy, but it's the weight that builds the strength necessary to push the button. You can't fake the pressure required to make the button respond. You can't pretend to be consistent. You can't pretend to be disciplined. Sooner or later, your fruit will reveal your foundation. Success exposes those who haven't paid the price. It looks like it comes overnight, but it's built in the dark. It's built through daily decisions that no one notices. It's built when you forgive when it hurts, give when it stretches you, speak truth when it costs you, and work with excellence even when no one thanks you. That is the unseen price, the spiritual sweat that makes success sustainable. There are people who know what to do. They've learned the strategies, attended the seminars, watched all the content, but still feel stuck. It's not because they're not capable. It's because they haven't made the internal exchange. They're still trying to hold on to comfort while chasing calling, still trying to keep approval while walking in authority, still trying to be accepted by everyone while doing something that's not for everyone. The price isn't just in time and effort. It's in letting go of old versions of yourself that can't carry the weight of your next level. Every elevation demands separation. Separation from the crowd, separation from average, separation from the idea that you can keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Paying the unseen price often looks like walking alone. It looks like obeying a vision that hasn't manifested yet. It looks like sacrificing the temporary for the eternal. And most people won't do it, not because they can't, but because they don't want to experience the discomfort that comes before the reward. But the people who do, the button always responds to them. Not because they're special, but because they're surrendered. The price doesn't just test your effort, it tests your heart. Will you still do what's right when it's hard? Will you still serve when you're tired? Will you still stay focused when distractions offer easier roads? The pressure applied to that button is less about muscle and more about mindset. It's about staying aligned with purpose even when progress is slow. It's about working as if the outcome is guaranteed, not because of arrogance, but because you trust the principle more than you trust your feelings. The success button doesn't recognize emotion. It doesn't respond to your frustration, your impatience, or your complaints. It only responds to obedience, consistency, and sacrifice. That's why so many people think it's not working. They're pressing with hope, but not with discipline. They're pressing with desire, but not with diligence. They're applying emotional bursts, but not spiritual faithfulness. And until the pressure matches the purpose, the button remains still, not because it's locked, but because it requires something deeper than desire. When you understand that success requires an unseen price, you stop comparing your process to others. You realize that no one skips the cost. Everyone you admire paid something in secret to stand where they stand in public. Some paid with isolation. Some paid with years of unnoticed effort. Some paid with spiritual warfare and mental battles that almost broke them. But they paid. And because they paid, the button responded. Not quickly, not always visibly, but it moved. And once it moves, the floodgates open, but only after the unseen price has been honored. People want to skip the price and claim the promise. They want the crown without the cross. They want the influence without the intimacy, with purpose. But the process doesn't bend for impatience. It doesn't rush for emotion. The easy button sits there, waiting, not for the loudest voice, but for the most faithful spirit. The unseen price is what refines you, sharpens you, prepares you. It's what builds the vessel that can handle what's on the other side of the push. Without paying it, you might touch the button, but you'll never activate what's behind it. There comes a point in every person's life when they must make a decision to press forward with purpose or to stay stagnant in comfort. The truth is, the success button can be pushed, but it won't push itself. It requires intention, consistency, and sacrifice. And here's what many people don't realize. If you don't choose to push that button now, life will push back on you later. You either carry the weight of discipline today or the weight of regret tomorrow. One is heavy for a moment, the other is heavy for a lifetime. But both come with pressure, and you have to choose which kind you're willing to endure. When you avoid the work of transformation, you delay the reward of elevation. Life was never designed to leave you the same. It's either sharpening you or stripping you. When you don't push yourself with purpose, life will push you with problems. When you don't wake up with drive, life will wake you up with consequences. This world doesn't reward apathy, it disciplines it. You can't escape pressure, but you can control its direction. You can apply it now in the form of action or absorb it later in the form of regret. Every day you delay your obedience, your calling doesn't disappear. It just becomes harder to hear. Your inner voice starts fading, not because it's gone, but because you've tuned it out with distractions, excuses, and comfort. Life has a way of forcing your attention. And when you don't listen early, the lessons get louder. What you avoid in discipline, you will confront in crisis. What you ignore in structure, you will face in chaos. That's the law of sowing and reaping. You cannot avoid the harvest. Only delay it. And the longer you delay, the more painful it becomes when it arrives. There are people who know they're called to do more, to build more, to live more. But they keep waiting for a perfect moment to begin. The perfect moment never comes. What comes instead is stagnation, then frustration, and eventually consequences. You wake up one day and realize time didn't pause while you hesitated. Opportunities didn't wait while you procrastinated. And now you're not just facing the pain of starting, you're facing the pain of wasted potential. The longer you ignore the button, the harder it feels to push, not because it changed, but because you did. The enemy of destiny is not difficulty, it's delay. Delay looks innocent, but it compounds. One missed day turns into a week. One excuse turns into a lifestyle. And suddenly, you find yourself adjusting to a lower standard, a smaller vision, and a lesser version of yourself. Not because you weren't capable, but because you didn't choose the pressure early. And now life is applying it for you in your finances, your relationships, your mind. The button is still there, but now it takes more strength, more effort, and more time to press because you let it gather dust while you waited. You have to understand that success requires urgency. Not panic, not anxiety, but urgency and awareness that time is a resource, not a guarantee. Every day you breathe is a day you can build. But what you don't build today becomes the burden you carry tomorrow. The people who walk in greatness are not the ones who had it easy. They are the ones who decided that purpose was worth the pressure. They pushed before they were ready. They obeyed before it made sense. They moved before it was convenient. That decision is what made the difference between destiny and delay. When you push the button with discipline, you begin to direct your life. You begin to walk in purpose, not react to problems. But when you refuse to push, life starts directing you. You begin to live by default instead of design. You begin to respond to emergencies instead of pursuing excellence. Everything becomes urgent because nothing was handled with intention. And now, instead of pressing forward, you're putting out fires. Instead of building vision, you're managing survival. That's the cost of ignoring the button. You cannot escape the call. You can silence it, ignore it, or suppress it, but you cannot remove it. It will find its way back into your heart, your thoughts, your regrets. And every time you feel that stirring, it's a reminder that the button is still there, waiting for you to stop living on pause, waiting for you to stop letting fear dictate your decisions, waiting for you to finally say, enough delay, it's time to move. But the longer you wait, the more resistance builds, not from the world, but from within. The battle is not external, it's internal. This is the truth. Most people run from. The pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret is permanent. When you finally choose discipline, it hurts, but it heals. It stretches you, but it strengthens you. But regret doesn't stretch you. It suffocates you. It doesn't grow you. It haunts you. The button is hard to push because it requires you to face what you've avoided. But if you don't push it, life will remind you of what you missed. And the weight of that reminder is far heavier than the cost of obedience. So you have to choose. Press the button now or be pressed by life later. Wake up with purpose or wake up with pressure. Embrace the pain that builds or endure the pain that breaks. You don't get to avoid the process. You only get to decide when and how you go through it. You either go through it by choice or by consequence. The button will always be there, but it only works for those who are ready to push through the pressure with vision, with faith, and with disciplined daily action. The success button is in your hands, but the pressure to activate it must come from your habits, your faith, your daily choices. If you don't push it now, life will push back later. And let me be clear, God has already prepared the promise. What he's waiting on is your obedience. What he's watching is your consistency. The easy button is hard to push because it crushes the old you to release the real you. But once you press it with power, aligned with purpose, and grounded in truth, everything shifts, not just for you, but for generations after you.